Hey, great to have you here. So today I'm going to be doing a trailer reaction for an upcoming movie called Him. So interesting premise to this film. So it's a horror film, but it's also sports related. And I'm going to be running through some images here. I would do a full reaction playing the trailer, but I feel like the whole copyright stuff is always a mess. So I took some screenshots of the trailer and going to walk through a bunch of those. I'm not sure if I'll include all of them, but want to include as many as possible, just kind of dissecting what this trailer is all about. But pretty much, as I mentioned, it's a horror sports-related film, and it feels like the premise is kind of revolved around the movie's called Him. So I'm thinking, if you're not familiar with like sports terminology, a lot of times people say, "Oh, he is him," and that kind of means he's like the man, he's the guy, he's kind of the MVP, he's the go-to person. So that's presumably the reason for the title of this, especially since the entire lettering is capitalized. The gist for the plot line here is you have an athlete who's trying to be the very best, and it's a matter of how much are you willing to sacrifice? Are you willing to give like everything to be the best? And it's kind of going down a deep rabbit hole as far as how far are you willing to go to be the best. So a lot of people obviously train all that stuff, but are you willing to do some maybe sketchy stuff to be the best? And it seems like kind of where this film heads. But we start off with the photo here just saying, I said, do you want this? And it's kind of just showing the eyes of our protagonist, and it seems like they're being influenced by this other person that Marlon Wayans plays. Then we just get some imagery here of a full stadium and talks about if you want to transcend the game, you got to put in the work, and it's kind of just showing the spectacle of being an athlete here. Then from there, it's showing really the training aspect of things. So you have to have your mind and your body in sync in order to be the best. So it shows the main character kind of doing some different training exercises. And then we get an upside down photo. This kind of made me think of, so for folks who aren't aware, this is produced by Jordan Peele, which we'll see later in the trailer, but this is not a Jordan Peele directed film, it's just produced by him. But there's definitely some imagery here that feels like very Jordan Peele-esque, I would say. So this made me think of Us. So we're upside down here where they're out training and running, so showing kind of the upside down view of things. But they're pretty much out there training with one another. You see them flexing here in the picture as well, just showing off all the progress they've made. And here, once again, showing no days off, so constantly working to be the best. You can't really rest on your laurels at all. You have to always be working to be the best. No sleep here, once again, so continuing to try to be the best. Then there's some exercises here where our protagonist feels like he's failing. He's not doing necessarily good enough here. And then we get a weird image here. So we have two football players colliding. Obviously, concussions are a big thing with football, so we see them clash heads, and then when they do that, we see kind of an x-ray view of things where their heads are combining. If you're thinking of like those old football games, I'm trying to think what that one was called. Like it was like an NFL Street type of game where wherever you had a massive collision, you saw like the crunching of their heads and stuff like that. Feels very much like that. It's also kind of like Sniper Elite if you're familiar with that game, but just showing us the damage being done to these people here. And then here's where we get the indication that yes, this is produced by Jordan Peele. And then we see that the person doing the hitting, which is kind of strange because he's a quarterback, but I guess we're saying he's kind of all facet athlete type of person. We see our main character go from having that extra view to seeing him actually standing over somebody. Not sure if it's actually the same shot or if it's just him and they're cutting to a different angle of him doing the same pose, but he's pretty much just seeing somebody who's been just knocked out at this point. Then we see Marlon Wayans, so this is kind of the first time we see him actually in the trailer, but showing him that he's kind of the teacher here and trying to get his protege to sacrifice everything to be the best. This is probably the weirdest. So there's a lot of weird images coming up. The back half of this trailer is full of a bunch of crazy stuff, but he's out training on this track, and there's like this bug creature standing behind him with like an axe, and we see it only for a few seconds, but he's standing there behind him, and then he swings it at the main character, and then we just kind of cut away from that. So not sure what's going on here. If maybe he's kind of losing himself as he's, doing everything he needs to be the best. It seems like at some point he's taking like drugs, so not sure if this is going to be like a mental game for him or if there's actually going to be some physical things at play here. Not positive there. Maybe, once again, maybe it's a sign for concussions and all the impacts you can have there and kind of the spiral you may take down your life. But we'll have to see what the real message is. Obviously, Jordan Peele kind of goes pretty deep with his stuff, and while he's not directing this, his influence is probably going to be here, so I'm sure there's going to be some underlying message that takes place here. So we have the character, once again, getting some oxygen, so he's obviously just trained really hard. Then we get some weird images here of somebody dragging this like hammer with a spike on the back out in this empty field. And then we see them a little bit here, and I'm not sure necessarily who this may be, but just kind of some more images there. We see our main character here, and it shows that his eye has like a scratch on it. So it's showing maybe he's like, I don't know, changing in some capacity. Maybe he's like not human anymore. not positive there, but it shows some kind of impact to him that these drugs that he may be taking are having on him personally. Then we get a lot of weird imagery here of him kind of rising to fame, I'm assuming, where he's seeing kind of the glitz and glamour of being a famous athlete. So it shows him in a suit here, and then he's surrounded by some other famous people as well, and he's just kind of freaking out at this point. It feels like everything's kind of blurry. And then we're back to him being screamed at by Marlon Wayans, saying he has to sacrifice everything, and we get a lot of weird images here once again. And then there's kind of a weird scene here where he's in like an ice bath where he's just like laying on the sheet of ice, and he's being scanned by some machine. So I'm not positive what's happening here, but I'm assuming it's some kind of recovery, but maybe some other stuff's taking place with that laser. Not positive there. And then we see some weird masks on these walls, and we see some horns from something, and we see this crazy woman screaming out in that middle of that field as well. So it seems like there may be some kind of cult-like stuff happening here, that maybe he's kind of selling his soul to the devil or something because he wants to be the best athlete. Is that maybe the message they're going for? Some kind of dark road he goes down as he's trying to be the best athlete. Then we also get him in training here with Marlon Wayans, and we have this person who is just having their face get pelted. So if you've ever seen like those either baseball or football machines where you put the ball in and it spins so fast that it just launches the ball, well, this guy's like sitting in front of it that he just gets pelted in the face, presumably over and over again. He's bleeding. He seems to be having a good time with it though, so I don't know really what's going on here. They're kind of just once again sacrificing their bodies to be the best. Then we get our character smiling, so it feels like he's probably turned or some kind of evil version of himself at this point. We see a brain scene, so that goes back to the whole concussion type situation, or just evolution going on there, whether it's something from getting hit or if it's from whatever drug he's taking. Once again, some change is taking place within his brain, it seems, from the images we got here. We see him being strangled by somebody with like a plastic bag, so not sure what that's about. Then he's like smashing a helmet down. Maybe this is him like rebelling at one point and trying to take back his life, not sure. Then he's getting yelled at and has Marlon Wayans just saying, "Show me if you want to be the best," because he says he'll sacrifice everything, and he wants, hey, let me know if you're actually going to be willing to do that. We see a close-up of an eye once again here, so that may be some biological effects that are changing within him. Then Marlon Wayans is just yelling here. And then we close out with a scene of him just covered in blood in front of these cheerleaders. I'm not sure if this is actually something there, if it's something in his head. It could be some kind of like display or commercial or something that he's trying to do, because there's obviously people behind him. So it's either him having this public display as like some kind of show or commercial, or it's something he's just kind of making up and just imagining himself. Not positive there, but being covered in blood is kind of a weird image, so I'm not sure if I was a company I would want to be promoting that with my product. But either way, that kind of just wraps up everything here. That may not even be in the film necessarily, because we kind of close out with the title with that as well, and it seems like there's like a star there at the middle of the field as well, so maybe it's just showing him being turned at this point, and as I said, maybe getting demonic. Who knows with that. So this comes out in September, so interesting. We'll look forward to seeing that. I'm not sure we have a whole lot coming out in the fall time frame that I'm super pumped for yet, so this may be the first one on the list that has some intrigue to it. Obviously, it's kind of a unique concept. We've been familiar with the sacrifices you have to make to be a pro athlete, but this kind of talks about maybe going down a darker path that doesn't necessarily take place, but it's kind of could be a metaphor for what people do sacrifice in order to get to the very top. So what are your thoughts on this one? It seems interesting. As I mentioned, it's not a directed by Jordan Peele film, but it seems like there's a lot of influence from him here. I'm hoping it leans more towards, I really liked Get Out. Us and Nope I wasn't as high on, but they were okay overall. But it seems like a lot of times we get really deep with some of these metaphors and messages that doesn't necessarily hit as strongly because we're trying to be the smartest person in the room with the message that we're delivering. So hopefully we have some cool ideas and concepts really brought up here, but hopefully it's kind of stays somewhat grounded and feels like a movie that most people can enjoy and get kind of the point of towards the end of it. So what are your thoughts? Is this something that you're really going to be interested in? Would love to see the feedback there on if this is a film people are pretty hyped about. I'm not familiar with Justin Tipping, the guy who's directing this, so I'm not sure if he has other work that maybe you guys are fans of. Let me know down in the comments below with that as well. So yeah, just figured I want to cover this movie since we had the trailer drop today. I'm also probably going to wind up seeing the movie Sinners, so if I do, look forward to a review for that next week. So yeah, that's kind of all things coming up as far as movies go on the channel here. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope to talk to you again soon.